Good evening, everyone. I'd like to open the meeting of the Finance Committee for the purpose of discussing the budget, the FY 2019 budget. The agenda order, I'm going to switch a bit, and I'd like to address finish where we left off last time with a review of the FY 19 skating rink budget and the golf course budget, which would finish up the city side of the budget. And if that's not a problem with anybody, I think it's probably a wiser way to go. Once that's done, then we'll go into the education budget. That being said, we will be in the large book. Big book. Start with the ice skating rink. Mr. Gingrich.
Thank you. FY19 budget for the skating rink, we're looking for $358,800 for personal services and $377,800 for expenses, for a total of $736,600.
Questions by the council? Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Gingrich. Just one question, Mike. General liability insurance. I realize it's $1,000 this year. I'm just wondering, in 2016 it was $7,188, and how we zeroed that out in 17 and 18, and then brought it back to $1,000. We have to have general liability at the skating rink, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The amount for the last couple of years has been around $700 and something for the bond, and there's a special bond for that. And the rest of it we're picking up on the city side.
Under an umbrella policy?
Yeah, under the umbrella.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by the council on the skating rink budget? Being none, I'll accept a motion to approve the skating rink budget for $358,800 in personal services and total expenses of $377,800 for a total budget of $736,600.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
On the motion, any questions, comments? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Sasslaw,
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rossignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Charis, sorry.
Charis, yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Next, we'll look at the golf course budget. Mr. Gingrich.
Thank you. We break up the golf course budget into the golf grounds operation and the clubhouse operation. On page 65, that's the golf grounds operation. We're asking for $321,856 in personal services and $247,700 in expenses.
Questions? Council Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could take a look at 52211, the water charges, and through you to Mr. Gingrich or the mayor, is my memory correct that way back when we entered into the agreement with Eastman Gelatin that we got water from them as part of the agreement? That's a yes?
Yes, we still do.
And we still do get water from them? So how much does it cost, and what's the agreement?
The amounts are billed twice a year. Basically, Dick Duggan takes a reading at the end of the fall and submits to corporate headquarters around $8,000, I believe. And then again, on June 30th, he would do it for a second time. So the total cost is somewhere in the $15,000 range.
15, 1-5, or did
Yeah.
you say 50?
15,000.
15,000, okay. And I ask that because this number here, well, it says 20,000 here that you're requesting, but you're saying it's 15, so that's 5 over. But I'm wondering, it seems relatively cheap for all that water, so I'm wondering, is it a possibility that we could purchase water from Eastman Gelatin moving forward? Has anyone ever looked into that, given our water shortage and the situation that we have going on with water now? Has that ever been explored? If they have that type of water to sell, that they could have entered into a 20-year agreement with us to sell us water, they must have a lot of water. So I'm wondering if that's anything that's ever been explored, since it is cheap and they have water, and we don't.
I believe there's been some studies on that, but the quality of that water isn't quite, I think, good enough without treatment to use it for drinking water, but it's fine for the golf course.
Thank you.
Other questions, councilors? Mr. Gingrich, when you say they supply us with water, where do they get that water from?
I think there's an aquifer behind that field.
Council?
Yeah, I was just curious. That was a good question, Councilman. But if it's potable water, we have no way of separating potable water with drinking water, do we, in the city, from like the watering lines and that type of thing?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, there's been some investigation on that, and it's quite expensive. They talked a number of years ago about doing some treatment and bringing up the quality of the water.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, we use water for non-drinking purposes that is very costly to us as well. So could we explore that for purposes of non-drinking water? I mean, it just seems like an untapped resource to me. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like I hear where you're going, and it seems like most houses that have sprinkler systems draw from the same pipe, and they just have 2 meters. One would be without sewer, the other one is with sewer. And it would be curious, though, it would be something interesting to find out, is there a way to separate, drinking water from water used for other purposes? At least to have an idea, what that would cost. Anyway, subject for another night, I guess.
Okay. The other budget we're looking at is the clubhouse budget. It's $263,500 for the salaries, personnel services, and $702,744 for the expenses, which includes $468,000 in debt service.
Council Sasslaw.
Thank you. I just had a question. I noticed on the salaries, the golf course, they submitted 191, the mayor approved 185, and the clubhouse, they submitted an increase, and it looked like it got level funded. I was just curious why maybe one versus the other got the raises, and I still am a little bit concerned about even the one that got the raises. We're looking at 3.8, close to 4% on those raises, so I'm happy they didn't get the 191, but the 185. But any commentary on why one set got raises and one set did not? And maybe I answered my question. It says a union job. Is that why?
Well, both sides of the budget, they put in for salary increases, and they were removed upon further negotiations with other unions, and then at some point we'd come back to you to transfer, to bring it back.
I still don't understand. So we'll just stick on the golf course. 5110. They went from 181. The request was 191. It went to 185. So why do they get raises, out of curiosity? I'm just going to put it right out there.
There was a person that works there, they got a step increase. That's over last year. So in 2018, it was a 181 budget, and the current budget is 185 because of some step changes.
It looked like all three employees got a raise there, correct?
Excuse me?
All three employees got a raise, or no?
No, no.
Okay.
The mechanic.
Okay. And so there was a step increase there, okay. And so on the golf, what's the proper semantics, the golf course clubhouse, so those stayed level, okay. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
All the employees, they came requesting an increase in salary. I did not think it was appropriate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions on the golf course? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the mayor's approved budget for FY19 for the golf course in the amount of $263,500 for salaries, $702,744 for expenses, and a total of $966,244 for a total budget.
So moved.
Dave, the page before.
Yeah, I think
too.
you need to combine the other. Are you going to take this in one motion or two, Mr. Chairman?
Sorry about that. Let's do it in two, just to make sure we do it right. So the first would be salaries in the... The first would be salaries in the amount of $321,856, and total other expenses of $247,700 for a total of $569,556.
So moved.
On the motion, any questions, comments? Roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Sasla,
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rozic,
Yes.
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 Charist,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
On the clubhouse, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the mayor's budget for salaries in the amount of $263,500, other expenses in the amount of $702,744 for a total golf course clubhouse expense of $966,244. Motion by Councilor McGinn. Discussion. Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Sasla,
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rozic,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Gravel,
Yes.
Charist.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Tim's throwing us curveballs with the roll call switching each time. It's okay. That concludes the review of the city-side budget. We'll move on to the educational budget. Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, councilors. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Give me the opportunity to say a few words before I introduce Dr. Levine to make his presentation. This was an extremely difficult budget year, as I touched on a couple of weeks ago when we gave the city side of the budget. Certainly many challenges, and I want to just take a moment to thank Herb Levine, our superintendent, Kara Murtag, our assistant superintendent, soon to be our superintendent, Jared Stanton, our business manager, our human resources manager, Steve Farrell, and the school committee members who are all here today. I just want to state that there were many late nights, many hours put in. Many counselors, you served on the school committee. You understand how difficult and challenging that can be. Great deal of work went into this, and I just want to state that this is an extremely caring, compassionate, hardworking group that cares deeply for the kids of our city, and it's truly an honor to serve with each member of the school committee. It's a terrific group that works extremely hard. This year there were some major financial concerns that certainly we've touched on. I'm not going to rehash what I spoke about a couple of weeks ago. Everybody knows our water issues that we're going to be working on here. Everybody knows the bills that have to be paid. Put a great deal of stress on the school budget, as it did on all of our city budgets this year. And I just wanted to compliment the work that was done. This year on the school side, we added to the budget $1,815,000 over last year's budget. That money was quickly gobbled up by salary increases that were negotiated and earned, health insurance, special education, and a number of other items. The tough decisions that came at the very end made us all, I think I can speak for everyone, made us all very uneasy. The two big items that we were concerned about was the cutting of 2 professional development days and also the cuts to supplies maintenance. We had many discussions. We had a public hearing a couple of weeks ago, in which we heard from a number of teachers and residents. It was excellent to hear from everybody. We listened, we heard what was being talked about, we heard the concerns, and like a good committee does, we met, talked it through, and tried to work to resolve these issues. I want to thank this City Council. Specifically, I want to thank Councilor Turco, Councilor Gould, Councilor Gravel for their leadership and being team players and working through this issue. It's very easy to stand and criticize and condemn decisions that are made. I think what makes a great elected official who's somebody who stands up and works with everybody else to come up with solutions that can work for everybody. And that was done here by this City Council, voting unanimously to free up $425,000 at the last meeting. Those were 2 items that were taken up, and we were able to free up, and it was unanimously voted to send that $425,000 over to the school committee to assist with some of our budget concerns. And I want to thank each and every member for that. In addition to the $425,000, Dr. Levine was able to, with the help of the administration and the school committee, was able to repurpose some additional money, another approximately $200,000, and he'll speak to that in a moment. But we've been able to restore the 2 professional development days and put a significant amount of money towards the maintenance and supply costs. We are still cutting some supplies. We have to take a little bit of risk, but the additional money really takes the concern away, and I think we're going to be able to make that work. I want to give a special thank you to the Peabody Federation of Teachers Union. Bruce Nelson, Joanne Eager, Mary Henry, Patty Nizwantowski, Eric Blake, I know I'm forgetting a couple of people, who worked extremely hard with us. And again, it's a situation we went in, sat in a room during negotiations and talked these issues through. And we were able to settle the teacher's contract in very short order, working together to make that happen. We've also just settled a tentative agreement with the paraprofessionals and also the AFSCME school unions. Very proud of that. We've been able to potentially settle those contracts before the new contracts even expire. And I'm not sure if that's been done in many, many years here in the city of Peabody. Again, thank you. This is, again, difficult budget. Looking forward to answering your questions and working with you. But again, I wanted to thank members of the City Council and members of the school committee for their hard work in making this happen. And I'm going to now turn it over to Dr. Levine for his presentation. Certainly, we'll be here to answer any questions you may have. Dr. Levine, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to keep this very short and answer questions as they come up. I, too, echo the words of the Mayor, and I would like to thank the City Council for all the years that I've been here. You folks and people who have preceded you have acted with honor and integrity and common sense and good judgment as a partner for the school system, and I cannot thank you enough for that. I just wanted to also emphasize the good work of our school committee. I know the Mayor has touched upon it, but this is my last opportunity in public with you. The people that I've worked with before, and some of whom are sitting here tonight, and the people that are on the school committee now, I've been in this business 49 years. I've never worked with a group of people that cared so much about doing the right thing for kids as these people do. I cannot tell you how honored I am to have served with them. I just wanted to give you some statistics. I believe that we have some of the best class size numbers on the North Shore, maybe in this part of the state. We run about 19.9 on average at the elementary school per class, 24 to 25 at the Higgins, and 22 at the high school. Now at the high school, some of those classes can be imbalanced, being higher in some subject areas and lower in others. But those are the class size averages. We are just under 6,000 students. We're at about 5,880 this year. We project around the same next year. We've lost 284 kids to Essex Tech. Essex Tech, by the way, our per pupil expenditure is $12,583. That includes everybody. When I came here in 2011, we had 110 students that were outplaced at an average of $73,000 a placement. Today we have 93. We've saved over $1 million in those 5 years. Worked very hard to, I think, be more efficient in our special education program. And the more kids we keep here, obviously, the fewer kids are sent out. This is not just a money issue. Educationally, almost every special education parent, if possible, would like their kids educated in the city in which they live and be a member of the society in which they will and have been growing up. So we're very proud of that statistic. Special education is about 25% of the total budget. That includes staff. So when you include everybody, it's about 25%, and that is a typical average statewide in the state of Massachusetts. This has been a difficult budget season, probably the most difficult since I've been here. I cannot thank the mayor enough for being a primary advocate for the school system. And again, your cooperation, the school committee's vision, add up to a wonderful school system full of terrific teachers and kids with support from parents in the greater community that you can all be proud of because you're all a part of it. And with that, I'll stop and answer questions that I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Levine. Questions from the City Council? Councilor... Wow. Oh, Councilor Charest.
Thank you. Dr. Levine, thank you for the years that you played as an interim superintendent. I've served with you when I was on the school board, and I knew 100% everything you did was for the kids. And that's just not a saying that you throw around easily. I truly, truly knew that was your goal. So I do appreciate that. With that being said, I have to say, prior to the budget meetings that we had, there was a lot of talk out there, even at a hearing, that the school board and the administration didn't care about the kids, didn't care about the parents and the teachers. And that's flatly not true. It was an insult to the board, it was an insult to yourself and your staff, because you truly care about the children, the parents, and the teachers, and all the staff. So hearing that, I really felt very, very bad, because I know, just to point out a couple, Beverly Dunn, who spent all her adult life for kids in the school system. Brandy Carpenter, who I knew spent many nights doing negotiations when her own kids are home celebrating different events. Just people like that, and the list will go on. A fellow teacher who sits on the committee from another district. These people don't care about kids and teachers. It was wrong to say. As a former school committee member, I know the time that the mayors and the council committee puts together these budgets. They're in it for education. They're in it for the kids. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. I just had to say it because I would be feeling really bad about myself that I didn't stand up for where I started from. And when I went from the school board to here, I said I will not forget where I came from. So with that being said, thank you and good luck in everything you do.
Thank you, Councilor.
Councilman Manning Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Dr. Levine. A couple questions. I know that the fourth quarter cherry sheet for the circuit breaker came in at $12.5 million. So what are you expecting to get on June 30th? In addition, we're getting more than what you had planned, obviously, with those type of numbers coming in the fourth quarter. So how much more is coming in that is not reflected in your current budget here that you're expecting on June 30th?
Thank you. Councilman, we had that information a while ago, and we factored it into our budget. It's about $100,000, Jared, about $100,000 more. It's about $100,000 more than we had originally projected in our first go-around of the budget, but we adjusted that before we presented to the school committee.
Okay, so it's just $100,000 on June 30th. That's all you're anticipating getting with the $12.5 million.
$100,000 more than we would have projected had it stayed at 68%. I think it went to 72%, and that'll give us about $100,000.
All right, so that's already factored in. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And did you get any, has there been any changes on the regional school transportation funding? Do we anticipate to get any more? I know that the House was putting an effort forward in the Senate to increase that funding. And I know it's the first thing that's cut, so they're trying to build it back up. So has there been any success, and do you expect any more regional transportation monies?
Not to my knowledge, we haven't had any word on that yet, so we haven't built anything into that budget line to reflect an offset. Jared, do you? We don't. Oh yeah, we don't get regional transportation anyway. We're not a regional school district.
Vocational.
Yeah, we don't.
No, Essex.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Essex Tech probably would go up a little bit. I haven't really followed the regional transportation portion of the governor's budget, but they would receive all of that money, and it would be offset in the assessments.
I know last year at budget time, we talked about closing down the Kylie and using that as part of the redistricting plan, and you had anticipated savings with heating and utilities. So how successful were we in savings with that plan, with the Kylie school?
So we only used the Kylie for our maintenance crew to have a home, while we decided what to do with the Kylie, while the mayor makes that decision. It doesn't cost us as much to heat the whole building, but it's not a very efficient building, and it still costs us $30,000 to $40,000 to heat that this year. So it's a lot less than it was when it was fully opened, but I ordered it closed down completely at the end of this year, and we're going to have to find a different place for maintenance, because that $30,000 to $40,000 is a beginning teacher's salary.
Yes, I agree with you. I know that we were supposed to realize more savings with closing down that school, so I'm glad moving forward we may realize those savings. And we also had talked about redistricting, and the part of the closing the Kylie was an effort to put forward a redistricting plan, and I don't know that that plan ever formalized either. And I have taken a look. You mentioned that the class sizes are 19 on the elementary level across the board, but
Average, I'm sorry.
average, yes,
Yeah.
that's what I meant. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. But I do see that you do have large numbers in the Carroll schools, first grade, second grade, third grade, and fifth grade. Especially the fifth grade, it's at 24 and change, so you're right at the cusp. And also the Center School has a second grade class of 25, and 2 classes of the 4th and 5th of 23. And the Welch School, of course, has a large 1st grade, and 5th grade is 24 to 1 as well. So I'm wondering what our plans are, and I know that we had just learned at a previous meeting that you were at, you enlightened us that the elementary school student population is increasing while the high school is decreasing. Is that correct?
The elementary school is at least staying steady, if not increasing, and the high school will, I believe, decrease once again this year when we open in September. Yes, that is correct.
There are other schools with enrollments that are extremely low in comparison to that, and I think that to offer fair and equity across the board, that we give all kids the same amount of student-to-teacher ratio, and be fair to the teachers as well, that they have the same student-to-teacher ratio for the same pay, that we need to address those things, and we need to put a plan forward in order to do that, because these numbers to me, they're just so low in some schools. I don't want to name the schools. I think, we all have the information in front of us, but I really think that we're well overdue for providing level playing field in each classroom for the students and teachers across the city, so that they all get a fair shake and get equal education across the board. So I would hope that we actually do formalize a plan in the very near future to provide that for our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. I apologize for what may be a little bit lengthy answer to that, but I would like to give you an answer to that. It's a very good question, a very good point. This school committee has discussed redistricting on a number of occasions, and I believe that for the next school year, we'll reintroduce a redistricting committee to come up with a plan for the following year. But I do want to make mention of a parent who came up with an idea on social media. I'm not on social media much, but this happened to pop up on my computer. And the parent said, regarding the evening off of class sizes, why not create a voluntary program where people volunteer to move their kids from the higher class size schools to the lower class size schools? And if we provided transportation to do that with the objective of evening off class sizes, it might work. So I will be floating that to the school committee. The school committee hasn't heard a formal proposal yet, but I will be floating that possibility to at least look into it, because I think it's a reasonable idea. There may be people who, when you think about class sizes, if you take a look at individual classes, there may be 7 seats open at a particular school and 5 or 6 seats that need to be moved in another school on the other side of the city. If we got enough people on a voluntary basis to meet the objective of what you just talked about, it might be easier to do it that way, because people will be volunteering rather than making them do it through a redistricting plan, which can be difficult on families. So your point is well taken. The school committee has discussed this on a number of occasions, and I believe that one way or the other there will be an answer for that next year.
Thank you, Dr. Levine.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor?
Just on that, I'm very interested in that proposal, Dr. Levine. I know it is something we've all discussed many times. I also do, and I've made this statement before, I also just don't want to lose sight of the fact that there's real people that are affected when we redistrict. There's young kids, young boys and girls who are at extremely important moments in their lives. I went through a redistricting when I was in school at the South Memorial School, and I remember it extremely well, and I've spoken about it in the past. And I do want to bring it up because it is something that all of us have to be aware of when we make these decisions. There were a number of students that were transferred from the McCarthy School over to the South School, and there were a number of students transferred from the South School, people that I had been going to school with for a number of years, that were transferred over to the Brown, and even a couple, I remember correctly, to the Welch. That was extremely, extremely disruptive for young boys and girls who really struggled to make that adjustment, who had been going through one school with close friends, with close relationships with teachers and administrators at their former school, to then have to move in the middle of their school journey, their educational journey, to move to a new school. I've always remembered that. It's always something that I think about, that there were real kids who were affected, who really struggled during that period of time, and that's a crucial period of time. So I also don't want to lose fact that there are real people affected by these decisions, and we have to be extremely careful to move a second grader or a third grader or a fourth grader, any grade you pick, to have them uprooted, taken from their social structure, their comfort zone, and have them move to a new school. I don't make light of that. I don't look at it as just numbers. I look at it as real human emotion, real feeling that these kids had, those parents had. They were a couple of close friends of mine. I remember that, as I said, extremely well. This has to be something that has to be looked at. Councilor Manning Martin makes some good points. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there's a real human element to uprooting somebody who's been such a part of one school and have them move to a different school. That is extremely difficult, to rebuild relationships, to make new friends, to adjust to a new environment, to adjust to a new setting. Let's not lose sight of the fact. Everybody's quick to say, let's look at redistricting, and we have to. The numbers show that, but it's not always about numbers. It's about real human emotion, real human feeling, kids at those important stages of their lives. I just want to state that.
Councilor Rosignol.
Thank you. On that point, we currently, for the counselors that may not know this, we already have open enrollment. So if a parent does choose to send their student to a class with lower class size, they have that ability. The only change, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Levine, would be providing the transportation piece. But currently, through our district, we already do provide open enrollment for a parent that wants to find a class size that may not suit their need, and they can already change within our district. So I just wanted to make that as a noted point. Thank you.
If I may, through the chair, just to emphasize that point, the caveat that this parent recommended is the transportation piece. So we would have to figure out what that would cost us as a district if we implemented it, and whether or not we'd have enough people volunteering to do it. But I think one of the blocks of open enrollment is, as a parent, you have to get your child to that school, and some people can't make that work. If we provide the transportation, there may be more people willing to move. So, yeah, good point.
Councilor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the spirit of full disclosure, my wife is currently a paraprofessional in the Peabody Public Schools system. Most of you know that, but I do want to make the record known. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I want to ask the superintendent, could you comment or provide more color about the $200,000 of funding that you've been able to pull back, or, you know, I guess where you got that from, or which accounts? Just curious.
I'd be glad to. Thank you, Councilor. Nearly all of it will come from the salary line, because we have had a better high out, low in than we expected so far this spring. We also saved quite a bit of money by hiring Maria Ferry back as a retired vocational ed director part-time, rather than hiring a full-time vocational ed director. So we had budgeted a significant amount of money for a vocational ed director. We'll be paying a lot less for that. In combination, that will add up to somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000. Keep in mind, though, that we also have in that budget some money for hiring teachers over the summer, which we always have to do. And Councilman Ann Manning, some of that, as you know, because you served on the school committee, when we get numbers that fluctuate during the summer, if we have to add a teacher, we will. So numbers that are on the borderline may wind up being split during the summer in July or August. But right now, most of that money will come from salary.
And thank you.
I'm sorry. We're not going to do that right now. Yeah, we're still in the process of seeing how much that will cost us.
And one last question, if you would. Under the special ed account, it looks like the positions are going down. Just staff enrollment full-time is down about, or projected to be down about 7 people, 6.8. Is that going to be enough? Do we have enough people to take care of all the students? Or is that retirements? I'm just more color on that, if you could, please.
So my guess would be, Counselor, that is more of a shift in where those people wind up as opposed to being cut from the budget. We haven't cut any special ed people, so, Jared, so that's correct.
Okay.
They've just been moved.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other councilors? Councilor Rossignol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to credit the negotiation team and the Finance Committee, Chairwoman Brandy Carpenter, Joe Amico, and John Olympio for all the hours they put into negotiations, the contract, and as well as this budget. So thank you. Dr. Lean, thank you very much for your service and your time here in our district. And you have the utmost respect for me and what you do and what you provide and what you think of our children, and I thank you. With that said, I just have a couple of questions. Looking through the budget book, one of the things I noticed was, I know supply lines have been shifted and changed, and the band uniforms and the band were all zeroed out. Could you just elaborate on whether that's a Mr. Stanton change or whether that's a cut in those line items?
Thank you, Counselor. That is a Jared Stanton magic trick. No, actually, he moved. Jared has taken the couple of years that he's been here to move line items into the place where he thinks they should be. So the things like the band uniforms and everything in that category has been moved to Accountable Unit 15, which is Performing Arts. Perfect. So that there's no cut there. As you know, there has been a cut in supplies. I will be proposing to the school committee that with any of the money that I have been able to find in the budget, that 4 areas be addressed: maintenance supplies, teacher supplies. I'll be asking the school committee to consider putting back the 1 teacher that we cut out of the PANS program, which is the night school, and $25,000 to the Performing Arts program because it was $25,000 light.
Thank you, and I appreciate all of those putbacks, and that would be the direction that I would move. One of the things you had mentioned earlier is special education and trying to keep students in our district. With that plan and that goal in place, was that the reason for such a sharp proposed reduction in special education tuitions?
I believe so. We're keeping more kids in district. To go from 110 to 93 over a 4-year period when most school systems are going up is a major savings for us of over $1 million, and a statement that we would like to educate our kids if it's appropriate here in the district. The mayor had just asked me about a special education shift. We are going to move some programs around next year with the special education department and the input of a lot of people, principals. There will be some programs moving over to the West School because we have some room over there. Eventually, what we would like to be able to do is have the capacity to actually tuition in other kids when we open programs like this so that we can continue to further offset the cost of special education in our own district. And that's coming.
Thank you. Another question I have is the reduction in the maintenance line. Is that going to at all impact or affect any timed maintenance, handlers at the Carroll, let's say, or at the Brown, or anything that is routine maintenance? No. What it likely could impact late in the year would be things like toilet paper, so I might be coming to your house and borrowing some, but no, those are the things that we have to look out carefully for when you reduce a line item like that. We know that both teacher supplies and maintenance supplies are going to be kind of tight this year, but we think for 1 year, with
We have stockpiled some of those supplies. We will be able to get by during the year. If not, I know that Carol will go back to the school committee. As you know, we give a monthly financial report every month. Sometime in the spring, if we're in trouble in any line item, I have and Carol will bring that to the attention of the school committee, and some decisions will be made.
Lastly, I know in the beginning of this whole process, a couple of months ago, there was this big headline in the paper saying that the school department is cutting $6 million. In actuality, this budget is raised by more than $3 million from what it was last year. Where did that $6 million figure come from, and how is that in relationship to the actual gain of $3 million from this budget from last year's budget?
So the $6.2 million that was first reported was my first look at the budget, saying if I had the money that I have now without going up at all, next year I would be $6.2 million shy because of the increasing costs. So we had to reduce or move or shift monies around in order to make sure that those costs could be met. They are mandated costs. They are things like health insurance, special education, contracts with bus companies, et cetera. Jared did a great job, by the way, of reopening a contract and getting only a 3% increase instead of a 6%, which had actually been built in. So he was able to negotiate that for us and save us a significant amount of money. But those mandated costs were there. Going into discussion with the school committee and with the mayor, looking at the resources that we were going to have, the mayor increased our school budget by $1.81 million. So that left me in an approximately $4 million hole. I had to find that $4 million. We were able to do that by reducing line items that we thought we could get by with for 1 year. You haven't asked about the 10 positions. There were 10 teaching positions in the district that I have eliminated. That's approximately $700,000 when you consider health insurance benefits. But we have, when I was here in 2011, we had 1,900 kids at the high school. This year we'll probably open in September with 1,425. So there has to be a reduction to reflect that. It's sufficient, effective, and common sense. We were able to make those decisions based upon not firing or letting go anybody that we wanted to keep. So any person that we wanted to keep in this district teaching, we were able to do. So we did that by retirement and attrition. So some of the class sizes that Ms. Manning mentioned, they're higher than what we would like. Better than most school systems. Even at 24 in the 5th grade, there are school systems that have 28. But we would like to be a little bit less than that. And that's why we take a look over the summer at where we are, say, on August 1st, and maybe make some adjustments and changes. We also take into consideration the demographics of a class. I involve every principal in significant discussions about the way a class shapes up. We may have a more challenging group some years than other years in particular places. So a class of 23, where you might leave that 1 year, may demand a split because of both the personalities and the challenges in that particular class. So there are a lot of things that go into making those decisions, and we feel quite comfortable that our process is a good one. It's worked over the past number of years.
Through the chair, just 2 more questions, if I may. There's no program changes. There is no program cuts.
That is correct. We haven't lost any programs.
Okay.
None.
I just wanted that point of emphasis. And another thing that I actually want to commend you for is the Chromebook initiative. You're actually a year ahead of schedule in that initiative. It was going to be a year from now where the entire high school was going to be online with Chromebooks. So I want to commend you, and I'm assuming that's where some of the supply money is going to be going from, is the high school, because of the investment in technology.
Yeah, we've actually budgeted for that in this budget, the $65,000 to continue to be a year ahead. And at the risk of being criticized, as I was at the open meeting for backslapping, couldn't do it without you guys and without the mayor. A great head start for us technology-wise came out of the mayor's proposal for capital expense. So every time you've helped us, it's helped us move forward significantly.
And lastly, just a point of information. 4 years ago, we had a drastic number of students that there was a bubble coming through our district, and it affected the Higgins. So we ended up removing a cluster and putting them into specialized programs. That bubble is now shifted to the high school. So although you're correct in speaking that we're down a number of students, we knew that bubble was coming because it already had hit the Higgins 4 years ago, and now it's just shifted onto the high school. And now there's a new wave right behind that that's actually increasing enrollment both at the Higgins and the elementary school. So I just want to commend you for your hard work, for the numerous budget meetings that I attended that you and the school committee had, and I want to thank each and every school committee member here for a job well done, and I appreciate all of your hard work. Thank you.
Again, through the chair, that also speaks to Ms. Manning's point about increased population at the elementary schools. We have a very big 5th grade moving into the 6th grade at the Higgins, and we've added a cluster because of that. So we have to meet contractual obligation. That makes sense anyway because of the numbers. But that just goes to the point that, you know, we do have shifts in population. I think that the building and opening of the middle school will continue to increase our population at the elementary schools, and eventually that will catch up at the high school because we are now steadied off at Essex Tech with 284 kids.
And if I could just add to that, at the regional vocational school now, we're averaging around 80 students per year that go from the middle school to the regional vocational school. That's a dramatic increase over what we were losing in terms of students going to the Essex Aggie and the North Shore Tech. We were looking at maybe 10 students a year that were going to those two schools. Now we have 80 students going to the regional vocational school. So it only stands to reason that our numbers have gone down at the high school because of, I think it's directly attributable to that.
Yes, Council Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry to come in late there with the wave. Dr. Levine, thank you for all you've done. Quick question. There's almost 270 more kids at the Carroll than there are at the Brown, yet the Brown, and I probably know the answer, but the Brown has a higher budgeted dollar factor. Is that because of all the special ed? Wow, that's unbelievable.
The majority of our elementary special ed programs are centered at the Brown.
Wow.
And that demands more teachers, it demands more specialists, and it demands more paraprofessionals.
Out of the 360, you might not know it, but of the 360 at the Brown, how many are special ed?
I'll ask her if you don't mind. Ms. Petropoulos, approximately how many students are special ed at your school out of your total population? One third.
Dr. Levine?
You're welcome.
Councilor Melville, then Councilor Shrest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Levine. I just had one question and just one comment. Security is where is that? Is that going to? I know we're talking about it later in a transfer being requested by the mayor, but is that included in here? Or is it going to be part of that, Mr. Mayor? Through the chair to either Mr. Mayor or Dr. Levine.
Thank you, Councilor Melville. I will be presenting to you shortly at an upcoming meeting. We can't get into certain specifics as to the work that's taking place, but there's going to be an investment in cameras, in upgrades to certain entrances, a keypad system that we already have at a number of schools for entrance, but we'll be doing that at all of our schools. In addition, we have an additional full-time officer at the high school, and I think you'll see some major differences in the high school entrance. So yes, I will be able to, I think, present at an upcoming meeting more details. We certainly can't break it all down too much to alert people to what we have available, but that has been a big topic of discussion, as it should be, over the last few months, and there will be a big investment made. And a lot of that will be in the capital request that's coming. I felt that should be made as a capital request, because not only is that happening at our schools, and each school will be touched by that investment, but also City Hall and our libraries are also being, there's a plan in place. Tim Healy is, I think you see him in the back, and he's been working on that, and he'd be able to give us much more details at an upcoming meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate the point on that, and I understand it's certain parts of it probably not disclosed at this point, and I obviously support whatever. It's unfortunate that there's a discussion we have to have, but I think it's worthy at this time. The second point I wanted to make, and it's less for you, Dr. Levine, more for our future superintendent. If there, I know the supply issue is something that was brought up, and I appreciate the importance of positions over that, and I would agree with all the decisions that were made on that. But if it does get down to the point where there is a real issue and it's impacting the operations, I think that's something that needs to be brought up. But I know you had mentioned that it would be, and I appreciate all the school committee members and the decisions that they have to make. And you had mentioned in that meeting about the fluidity of these budgets, and I take that into account as we discuss it. And I appreciate that too. I know you can't tell everybody, you can't tell us today what's going to be your population, of the school population, come September. But if that is the case, I think we can all agree that we want to make sure that the student body as a whole is properly supplied and getting the most they can get out of this. I know, my big, a lot of the parents that you talk to, it's the building and the issues in that, and I know those are being addressed through requests through the state for the school building authority and whatnot. But that is just my comment, that I would appreciate if that becomes an issue, that be made so that we can, as elected officials, as leaders in the community, try to address it in the best way possible. Thank you.
Other councilors? Council Gould?
Sorry, I should have asked it back. What's our total special ed number, Dr. Levine, please? Thank you.
Are you talking about budget of kids? Okay, we have, by the way, our total special ed per pupil is $15,068. The number of kids, I have that, I just can't find it. You got the number of kids? 1,283. So 1,283 kids, and that's, again, pretty typical of the state of Massachusetts percentage-wise.
How many of the 1,283 go outside, or is that 1,283 in-house that we educate?
No, that's 1,283 total, and then there's 93 of those that are out of placement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council Turco?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Dr. Levine. Doctor, I would imagine this is similar to what you had said earlier about shifting some of the line items, but teaching professional, I'll just stick with the brown for now. Teaching professional phys ed, cut 46.95%. And that's similar across the board, except for a couple of schools actually increased. I'm just wondering, was that a shift in where you placed those line items? Maybe through you to Mr. Stanton.
Yeah, I believe that's the case because I don't think we've cut any phys ed teachers, but I will turn it over to Mr. Stanton, Counselor.
Yeah, he is correct. 99% of the shifts are just accurate FTEs compared to the budget last year. So we would just clean up. But the budget that you're seeing right now is accurate FTEs as of around March 1st, when this budget was initially the FTEs put together. So pretty spot on.
Thank you. So on that same note, some of the ones that concern me are obviously the special ed, so I just want to be sure. In the Carroll School, you have a teaching professional special education, which was reduced from 4 this year to 3 for the next year. That's not an actual position.
It's not an actual reduction. In addition to the general fund, we also have grants that positions are budgeted in those grants. So if money frees up, we sometimes move paraprofessionals and other staff into those grants, thus reducing the general fund FTE and increasing the grant FTEs. The FTEs you're looking at right now are general fund FTEs.
Thank you. While I have you, there was talk about, and either one of you can answer this, there was talk about the cuts in the library para hours from 19 to 12. But for each line item for library para, you have a 49% decrease. So let's, for argument's sake, call it 50%. That doesn't equate to 7 hours from 19 to 12. I'm just wondering why it's higher than what would be 19 to 12.
Yeah, I can't speak to that percentage, but I can speak to our expectation is that we will have the library paras for 12 hours, cutting from 19 to 12. So do you have an answer for that?
Do you have a specific line item on that one?
I'll give you the first of, they're all, like I said, relatively the same, but the first one would be under Carroll School, line item 59, excuse me, yeah, teaching para, no, excuse me, wrong one. Library para would be line item 58, from $12,731 reduced to
Sure.
$6,528, 48.73%.
The reason for that is actually, I believe that position changed. The person that was budgeted in FY18 left the district at a higher salary. The person that took over that position started on step 1. So therefore, there's a reduction of the 7 hours, but it's really, you're seeing it based on a lower amount of salary.
Thank you. Just for my own knowledge, because again, it's similar to the cuts with supplies. Equipment is cut in several locations. What would I know as equipment?
Say that again?
What specifics could you bring to the line item
Sure.
of equipment, since it's cut 80%, 85%, specifically again in the Carroll School?
Yeah.
What that would include?
So equipment might be, a school might have, they might purchase their own Chromebook or something like that. Teaching supplies are paper, ink, etc. Equipment is more of a something that, no, textbook, like I said, like a computer, something like that, that they might purchase out of their accounts.
Thank you. I'm just going to keep moving on, so I apologize.
Sure.
You know, I wasn't on the school committee, so some of this
Sure.
might be boring to you. But teaching para under the McCarthy School, where you reduce it by one body, where did you reallocate that position?
Sure.
Just so I could see.
Yep, that was also to the 240 grant, which is a special education grant, so that just went over to that one.
Thank you.
And another example, I'm sorry, of the equipment could be a copier or a printer that a school might purchase, so more than a computer.
Okay, and I believe Councilor Rossignol may have, well, he did ask this question regarding the performing arts supplies. You also have, and this is under Higgins, I'll go straight down, equipment cut 75%, performing arts supplies cut 100%, special ed supplies cut 100%, performing arts supplies cut 100%, performing arts band equipment cut 100%, and there's more in the high school level.
Sure, I can explain that. So like Dr. Levine said, all of the performing arts budget was put into Accountable Unit 15. The reason for that was it was becoming very confusing for the Higgins and the middle school, what the principal was in charge of and what Mr. Simmons was in charge of. So he's in charge of Accountable Unit 15, so we moved that money and allocated it over to that line. The cuts in special ed and everything else was principal discretionary reductions that he can, that mostly for the special ed supplies, he's using regular supplies to cover those costs. So there'd be an increase in that of the special ed supplies.
Okay, so on the same line, but under performing arts, you have a 50% reduction to band transportation. So that wasn't reallocated, that was just cut 50%.
Yep.
So how, through you to Dr. Levine, how would that affect the band program, which I think is a pride and joy to most of us here in the city of Peabody?
Yeah, that won't be able to stand on its own. That's why I'll be recommending to the school committee that we put $25,000 back into performing arts from the money that you and the mayor have reallocated.
Thank you, Doctor. West School Therapeutic Program cut 100%. Where is that allocated?
You said the West School? Therapeutic.
Yes, West School Therapeutic.
That was also moved into a grant as well.
Guidance Professional Intervention Counselor cut 100% under special ed.
Yep.
Grant.
What line was that one now?
That would be line 328.
Yep. Correct. That is also out of the 240 grant as well.
Thank you. In-district tutoring, you cut 50%. Do we have an alternative method to tutor some of the kids?
That was just based on the recommendation of the special ed director when she put her budget together.
Special education teaching supplies cut 50%. Testing supplies, special education cut 33.33%. What else do we have? Mobility services, contracted service cut 72%. I mean, it seems as though there's a lot of cuts to the special ed budget that kind of make me a bit nervous, especially since I am the counselor from Ward 1, and as Ms. Metropolis just said, 120 of those kids at the Brown are directly affected by that. So I'd like the fact that you're trying to streamline, but I also don't have a real way to cross-reference where this money is, or if it's an actual cut, or where it is.
Ms. Gruby is under the weather and was unable to be here tonight, and we'll get you that exact information. But please rest assured that, number one, we are under a legal mandate to provide all the special ed services that we need to provide, and we will. And number two, I'm assuming that Ms. Gruby has moved a lot of that money into grants for next year that she was unable to do this year. So there'll be nothing cut that services a kid and leaves a kid who needs it without that service. That I promise you. And as soon as Ms. Gruby is able, she will get you specific areas as to where she moved that money.
Thank you. And Dr. Well, I have you because this was your statement during one of the budget meetings with the school committee. There was somehow a maintenance craftsman was accidentally hired above and beyond what was originally approved by the school committee. But in this budget, I see maintenance craftsman listed as 8, which is still listed as 8. 8 for last year, 8 for this year. So where did we cut that one accidental hire?
So that we cut a custodian. We cut a second custodian position. We had 2 open custodian positions. In consultation with Mr. Healy, Mr. Healy felt that it would be more advantageous for us to keep the maintenance craftsman who has a great many skills and services all of our schools, and that we could reduce a second custodial position and still make it work. So Mr. Healy is working on a plan for next year as to how these custodians will be distributed.
Thank you. And I just have a couple more, and I'm almost done. Under administration, Director of Curriculum, Instruction, Education, Technology. Last year was line item at $85,000. This year at $93,000, which is a 9.5% increase in salary for that position. Total of $8,000 for one body. How do we justify an $8,000 raise for a specific individual?
That's simply by contract, Counselor. That's the administrator's contract. Not only do you get a raise, but you go up a step because he began at the lowest step when he moved over into that area. He was already in the Was he already in the administrator's contract, Kara? No. So he moved into the administrator's contract at the old language, and the old language demanded that he be at one of the lowest steps. So as he moves up in step now, he will not only get a step raise like teachers do, but also the 2%. I'm not sure of the exact amount of money, but it's all contract driven.
Okay, I can almost, even though I still feel like that's a very steep raise for one person for 1 year. It's the next one that more alarms me, which is K through 12 guidance coordinator, Unit B, which, again, that was $85,000 last year, which raises to $114,000, which is a $29,000 salary increase for one body at 34% raise. I really hope that's not a contract.
I can explain that.
Okay.
Last year, we had a retirement who was a department head in Unit A, who ran the guidance department at the high school. We felt that a school system our size with almost 6,000 students needed a K through 12 coordinated director. So that person moved in from Unit A at a lower salary of 85 to Unit B at a higher salary of wherever it was that we placed him on the scale due to his experience. It so happens that Mr. Quist was the director of guidance for the last 15 years over in Salem and came here because he wanted to come to Peabody. And that's why that's a large increase. It's not the same person, and it's a different job with different responsibilities.
Thank you, and this is actually my last one. Same thing with the salary increase. Assistant Superintendent Clerical went up an 8% raise of $4,000 in 1 year. Is that also a union position? The clerical position is a union
Are you talking
raise?
about my assistant, clerical?
Assistant Superintendent, whoever that may be.
The assistant superintendent would be a union position.
It is.
Yeah.
And the union contract calls for an 8% raise in 1 year?
I don't know offhand, but whatever it is, we're mandated to follow the contract. Now, she has been with us, is this her first year? So wherever she came in placed on the salary scale may be different than the person who left. The person who left worked for us for a relatively short time, and of course, the changeover, she may have come in a little higher, and she may have been placed on the contract a little bit higher, but it's all union-driven.
Okay. The blue copy that we received tonight, this is the same as the white copy that we had previously received, correct? There's no changes in this blue copy? This blue copy was placed on our desk this evening, so I didn't know if we needed to receive this as a late communication or if it's the same information in both.
There's only one correction, and that's enrollment. You know, and the enrollment was adjusted a bit.
So move to receive late communication from
On the motion,
the school department.
all in favor, any opposed, a vote?
And other than that, there's no, we haven't specifically line itemed where that $200,000 is going to go.
That will be up to the school committee, Counselor. I will be making my recommendations on the 26th.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, that's appropriate that the school committee hasn't line itemed those monies yet, but we're going to vote to approve them without knowing exactly where they've been line itemed?
There is we're allowed to, whatever the recommendation of the mayor is, we can't increase anything. So if he wants to move $425,000 over to the school committee budget, then it's up to the school committee to place where that money is. You're voting on their bottom line budget. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
No,
what happened.
excuse me, through Mr. Chairman, it does answer my question. I just wonder about the $200,000, for lack of an exact number, it hasn't really been allotted. So where, if, for instance, tomorrow Dr. Levine decided to allot that toward just salaries and not anywhere else, and I'm not saying you would do that, but does the public have a chance to address where that money is now being spent, whereas they hadn't had that opportunity before because it wasn't there?
He would have to do that through his school committee. So the public would be a transfer that he would request through the school committee.
So there will be another public hearing regarding those
No.
expenditures? No, there won't.
There's no need for another public hearing. Mayor has the ability to take money within the budget and allocate it on either side of the House. He's choosing to allocate, and we have an item tonight to allow that allocation. So we have two choices you could make tonight. You could take the $425,000 and you could say, I'll cut it out. That's the only thing that you can do. Or you can approve the ability for him to move it over to the, to keep it in the budget and move it over to the school side. When it gets moved over to the school side, it's then up to the school committee in their deliberations to determine how that money gets placed within that budget, but there will not be another public hearing. That'll be a regular meeting issue that they will have to take up.
Through the chair, I believe I can answer your question, Councilor Turco, if I may. The $425,000 will pay for the 2 professional development days to move back into the budget. That's already a commitment that the school committee has made, and we have a contract agreement based upon that. The $200,000 or up to $200,000 is already in the budget. It's just moving it from one line item to another. So your concern, and I understand your concern, the $425,000 is spoken for. That's buying back the 2 professional development days.
Thank you, and with that, I'll just ask for one request. When that money, that $200,000 is reallotted by the school committee through you to my counterparts on the school committee, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us, or maybe even publicly, as to where that money went, I think it would be great to actually know where the $200,000 wound up going. So, thank you.
I think that's a great suggestion. We'll do that. We're going to be taking that up on the 26th, and we can make a report that night, as well as sending notice to the council.
Thank you.
But just to reassure you, on the school committee's procedures are similar to ours in that, for instance, this evening, we're going to move and transfer funds in a public meeting in the amount of $782,955. You'll have a chance to vote on that. It's moving money from account A to account B, and you'll be able to challenge any one of those moves. They have a similar process and procedure. So you'll be hearing about it, and if they could provide it additionally in reporting to us, that's great.
Through the chair, Mr. Stanton would like to address, I think, one of Mr. Turco's questions.
So there's 2 things. One, I wanted to clarify the West Therapeutic Program, the $195,000 reduction in the special ed budget, that was actually not moved to a grant. That was moved to the West School budget, line 159. So it's $200,000 off the special ed budget, but it's really going to the West School, and you'll see that in line 159. You also had a comment about the assistant superintendent clerical position. The reason for that 7.9% increase is that person is currently at 90%. Next year, she's budgeted at 95% plus whatever COLA that person might be getting. So it's the actual cost. It is contractual.
Thank you for the clarification.
To further explain that originally in that clerical contract, anytime somebody started in a new position, they started at only 90% of the salary. We were actually uncomfortable with that language, and we were able to bargain it out to the future beginning July 1. So that's why this person will be getting the benefit of moving to 100%.
Thank you.
Councilman McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is really a follow-on to the question that Councilor Turco had about where the $425,000 ends up. We are going to deal with a request tonight that was deals with the $125,000 from the stabilization payback and $300,000 from the reserve. And that does increase the total, and I understand, Mr. Chairman, we're going to vote on the total. And we're told in this communication that it will go to line item number 51110. And when I look at the book, there are many line item 51110s in here. So if we could just take one of the schools as an example. Ultimately, when that $425,000 gets distributed, where will it end up in this book? What line item? Using, say, the Brown School as an example, which line item would I expect to see to go up as a portion of that?
So 51110 is a salary line. So if you look through this, you're going to see 360 of those 5110s. When you look at the 2305, which in this segment is the fourth sequence of numbers, that's professional staff, as well as 2310. Unit A is 2305 and 2310. So what we will do is we will go through each line, figure out what the per diem of each person was, and allocate that portion of that money to that line.
Okay, so what were those two sub-account numbers?
So if we're looking-
2305 and 2310?
In 2310. So if
Okay.
we're looking at the Brown School, to use your example,
Yeah.
it would go on line general instruction number 5, right at the top, 2305, general professional instruction teachers. Another one would be kindergarten. It would also be special ed, reading, anything with a 2305 and a 2310.
Okay, so if we're looking at the before and after, we should be looking at those two sub-accounts, and the net change, if you look at all of those throughout the budget, it's going to come up to
That or
425.
an offset, because it might be unrealistic to go through every single line. It might be an offset that we allocate that, and then you'll see it in the FY20 budget, but it'll be an offset, potentially.
Just to capture where you're off slightly, right? Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Counsel Sasslaw.
Thank you. So I had a question as far as, we talked about the $425,000 that we're going to move back over to the school side of it. I know you're going to repurpose $200,000. I did hear, I was concerned about supplies, because I heard you just say that the $425,000 is going to cover the 2 professional days that you negotiated. Is that correct?
The $425,000 that you hopefully will be moving over tonight will pay for the salary for 2 professional development days that we had cut from the budget, which allowed us really to settle the contract. The $150,000 to $200,000 that I have found in the budget due to high out, low in will be reapportioned in the budget by the school committee. I will be making some recommendations. A significant part of that $200,000, by the way, that wouldn't be available if you didn't give us the $425,000. Out of that $150,000 to $200,000, a significant part of that I will be recommending to the school committee to put back into both maintenance and teaching supplies. I'll also be recommending to put back a teacher in the PANS night program, and I'll be recommending to put back $25,000 into the performing arts line.
So the supplies, and forgive me, correct me if I'm wrong, but was it going from like 1.3 down to 500,000? Was that what was the numbers?
No, it's 1.3 to 800,000. It's a $500,000 reduction.
Okay, $500,000. So we're still at $500,000 short, and basically you're going to pull from the repurpose. Any idea what you're going to make for a recommendation on that? I mean, you've talked about a teacher and this and a few.
I believe 75, yeah, the teacher in the PANS program is only $17,000. It's a night program. They work a couple of nights a week. The recommendation that I will make will probably be somewhere around $75,000 to each line item.
So $75,000 to the supplies.
To both maintenance supplies and teaching supplies. And again, the school committee will have the final say as to how that's apportioned.
Okay. So I had kind of a broad question, and I know it's not, it's very unique that we negotiate a teacher's contract when we're coming up on a budget. And from a layman's perspective, and from my perspective, I look at this and I say, when you put the budget together and you figured out what you're going to need, you did it with the best information you had and hoping to get certain things out of that contract. But you had to make certain assumptions when you went into the budget, because the budget, two out of the 12 months are in this year's budget for the school, for the teachers. But the new contract starts, is it August 1st it starts? July 1st. So my question is we haven't been able to see the contract. I'm not asking to see it. My question, though, is you had to make certain assumptions on the school budget while you were negotiating with the teachers at the same time, because you had to have an idea of what you were going to ask for in this budget. Was there anything in the budget, I mean, in the contract that came up with the teachers that that maybe came in a little bit higher that you thought you were going to give? Because, as I said, when you put out the budget, you had to make certain assumptions. You were going to get certain things in the contract. Now you've resolved the contract. So is there anything in that contract, and I guess I don't think they voted on it yet, so you probably can't talk about specifics, but is there anything in particular that we should be aware of? Do you understand my question?
I would advise the superintendent that based on my knowledge of the rules of the game in terms of negotiation, that he not answer that, because there's a confidentiality rule that's built into the negotiation, which says that there would be no public statements made about the content of the negotiations until the contract's settled.
That's fine, I appreciate you clarifying that. When will that contract actually be signed off on and done, finalized?
I know there's eagerness on both sides to be able to have the vote and have the agreement signed before July 1st. But I don't want to say it will definitely be done, but I think both sides were hoping to be able to, again, I mentioned earlier, the first time in, I would say, a significant amount of years, to be able to roll right into a new contract and have something in place. So I think that's why we're looking at before July 1st.
Councilor O'Neill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I'd like to ask Dr. Levine if he could just revisit the $200,000, because in the budget right now, the high out, low in is already factored in at $253,000. So is there additional? I just wanted to clarify or get some clarification on that.
Yeah, that is correct.
So it'll be
There's some additional money, and
453?
I'm using the 150,000 to be conservative. 150,000. It may be as high as 200,000, but we haven't entered our summer hiring season yet, so we want to see how that all plays out. But right now, I'm counting on at least recommending to the school committee $150,000.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Over what has already been budgeted.
Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quickly, back to the superintendent. You made a comment a moment ago about how the $425,000 enabled the 150 to 200,000. You said you wouldn't be able to do one without the other, and I don't quite understand that linkage. How did one enable the other?
I wouldn't be able to count on any money, regardless of how well we did with high out, low in, until the contract was agreed to.
Thank you.
Councilor Charest?
Thank you, Chairman. Through the Chairman, actually, I'm going to look right past you, Dr. Levine, into a future superintendent and ask if she would come up, and I just had one question for her. I know you thought you'd be hiding in the background and you'd be able to escape, but thank you, future superintendent. A lot of discussion has been talked about a shortage of supplies, teacher supplies, making up some money for that, but still being short. Can I have your pledge that next year, if you're short paper supply, teacher supplies, that you will come and ask for a supplemental and not go without?
Sorry. As Dr. Levine stated, I will be working closely with the cabinet and my wonderful team behind me and the school committee, and running financial reports and keeping close eye on what we need. So I will keep everybody updated.
I know you would keep us updated, but I got to tell you, I know for many years of being on the school board and being a parent that we brought in tissues and crayons and papers and things like that. But I never remember a time that we didn't have the teachers' supplies that they needed. It may not have been to the 100% what they would love to be able to do. They may have a double-side the notes or things of that, but I've never seen the supplies. Teachers didn't have it to do their homework or to do classwork. I can't imagine next year that's going to be the first year it ever happens. I can't imagine that you wouldn't be coming to the school board, to us, if needed, for a supplemental. Am I correct there?
Yes, we will work on that.
Thank you.
Councilor Manning Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to commend you, Ms. Murtagh, for your response that you will do everything possible to work within your budget and not to plan to come back for a supplemental. So I appreciate your response. Thank you.
Other questions of either the superintendent or the new superintendent? Okay, if I could, I would just like to, for the record, note that school committee members Hockman, Amico, Dunn, Olympio, Carpenter, and Arnottis are all in attendance here this evening, not only giving their time at their regular meetings, but coming here to support and ensure that the budget that they worked on and approved gets approved by us. So I, too, appreciate the fact that you're here, and I want to make sure that the public knows that you're here, standing on their behalf. I was glad to hear about the $425,000 for the replacing the staff development, because frankly, when I heard that, I believed that you would be in impact bargaining, whether you know, just because you're in a negotiation. There's no way you can just violate a contract. And as the guy who put in, as the guy who was on the school committee when we put in the 5 staff development days, it was awful hurtful to feel that all of a sudden we're going to arbitrarily pull those out and not expect that we're going to get a fight from the union themselves. And so it's nice that that's going back to where it belongs. We put those in because of the state mandated time requirements at the time that ed reform was being passed, and there was a certain amount of staff development time that was required under the state law. I don't know if it's still that way, but I don't think that taking away from training is the best place to go if you want to keep a very good and excellent school system maintained. So I'm glad that it's going back in there, and that it was helpful in terms of getting your negotiations completed. And by the way, the last time that it was completed on time was under my watch. So, and it was quite an accomplishment because it hadn't before that. Yeah. I did have a question on line item contracted services and administration. I'm going to take a time from Council Manning Martin's book. I'm kind of curious as to why that's going up $15,000 and what's in that. So it's contracted services. It's right under HR admin. And I don't know what the content of that number is.
So that's part of the new superintendent's contract, and it involves a variety of different things, including the mandated mentoring through MASS and some other programs that she'll be involved in.
Okay, so there is a mandated mentoring requirement for new superintendents?
Yeah, actually, for everybody new to a district, yes, including a superintendent. She has chosen the MASS professional development program that she'll be involved in next year.
Thank you for the clarification on that. And other than that, I would just like to ask Ms. Murtagh to come back just for a second. Kara, thank you very much. And I just need to hear from, because I did listen to the, I don't really, let's put it this way, I don't want to insult anybody, but I made a promise to myself when I got off the school committee I wouldn't interfere in the school committee business. But I did listen to that budget session, and I just wanted to understand, from your perspective, do we have an educationally sound budget here, and are you going to be able to live within the confines of this budget?
We're going to work diligently to live within our means, which I believe we can with this budget. I will be like a hawk, though, so we will be living within our means, and again, working very closely with my team.
And I tend to worry a little bit less about some of the items that were discussed this evening, because if you look at the average vacancy, how much time is there typically in a vacancy in positions on average? Do you have any idea what that would be? A turnover, a vacancy.
Depending on the position.
That's exactly it.
But
see, she's already learned. It's dependent on the position.
But we try to fill them as soon as we possibly can, with the best candidate possible in front of our students.
Right, but we're never at 100%.
I'm sorry?
We're never at 100% staffing. 100% on
Close.
day.
We're close.
Close.
Yes,
95%?
at least. At least.
So if it was 98%, 3% of the positions would be representing 12, right? Roughly. So if you take the average daily pay of 3% over the course of a year, that was where, when we were negotiating, it was always, what we saw was our ability to stay within the confines of the budget, not having to ask for supplementals. And the same in with high out, low in, because, that's far from a science. At least that's, when we were doing it, was far from a science. We would peg a number based on our belief, and then we would deal with whatever happened. Hopefully with employment rates being as low as they are, that you're not witnessing high out, high in, based on the demand for people. So I'm less worried about it. I know you'll do your best to transfer that money as necessary and make sure that nobody gets short-sighted and short-handed on supplies and other things. So with that, are there any other questions on the school committee? I mean, on the school budget? If there's none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the mayor's budget of, and this is going to be adjusted by a separate vote later on for the transfer of the 425. So in the budget book, 62,561,507, which we know will be supplemented by the transfer, and 11,148,886 for other expenses, for a total of $73,710,393.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
On the motion, discussion, seeing none, roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Sasla,
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Charist,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
I then need I would like to have a separate vote on the North Shore Essex Tech Vocational School for the assessment of $4,103,807. On the motion,
So moved.
motion made by Counsel Gould, discussion. Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Sasla,
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville, Charist, Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Okay, we will take a 2-minute recess and we'll recap for the final budget motions. Yes.
If I can just say one thing, I just want to wish Jared Stanton, our school business manager, a best wishes in his new adventure. The city is certainly going to miss the 18-year-old face that walked in a few years ago. That he certainly showed me that he was well equipped to do this job, and he's done it very well. So, on behalf of the city council, good luck. We'll miss you, and I'm sure the new business manager has big shoes to fill.
I also just want to thank the principals that are here in attendance, Ms. Metropolis, Ms. Alfanos, Ms. Smith, Mr. Higgins, and Ms. Busey. Thank you.
Recess. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. Mike, you going to deal with these? All right, folks, if I can get us back in session. Item D on the agenda is the transfer of funds, various departments in the amount of $782,955. Mr. Gingrich. Item D.
Thank you. This request is to try to balance out our salary accounts for the year, all within the salary line items. There's no reserve fund or unreserved fund. It's just all within different salary lines. Moving from several salary lines to fund others. The biggest thing here is we initially voted $450,000 for fire overtime, which came in much better than expected. So we freed up money to actually fund police overtime that wasn't very good, of $430,000. Those are the highlights. The sheet attached gives you the exact counts and the detail.
Any questions from councilors? Councilman Martin.
Yes, I'm just a little confused. The first page, you list from and to, right?
Yep.
That you just mentioned fire overtime. That's what we were referencing, right? And then E. Have you gone to E yet? Which is another from and to snow removal services and snow. Has he talked about that?
That's a different
No,
transfer.
he's doing
Okay.
the transfers, we're on D right now.
So
That's
what I
the-
did was I broke up the transfers into salary accounts, and then the next transfer is expense accounts.
Okay. Okay, so, all right then, very good, thank you. So, can I ask about water? So we 170, you're taking 177,000 out of water? How did we end up with an overage in water?
I think the biggest thing was the treatment plan being down, so there was less overtime for the year for the water plants.
All right, so you think we spent 177,000 less in overtime in the water treatment? Because I thought it was, that number was
There's probably
230 across the board.
I think there's positions not filled there too. During the course of the year, people were in, people were out.
Okay, because I thought if it's overtime, I mean, I could find it in here if you give me 1 second.
No, it's not overtime.
Okay, because, okay. Okay, that's the only question I have for that page. Thank you.
Any further questions on the salary account transfers? Council O'Neill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question on the, you mentioned about the fire, through you to Mr. Ingers, the fire overtime, and I get that, but I seem to recollect just a few months ago we had to transfer some funds for firefighter overtime. So on this particular account, how would there be less money used?
So we transferred $450,000 to fire overtime based on projections, and it actually came in better. And I think part of it was because there were some positions not filled in addition to the fire overtime coming in better. So in the end, at the end of the day, we had approximately $240,000 that we didn't spend of that 450.
Just to clarify, it was probably not long ago, maybe 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No further questions.
Yeah, it's kind of a moving target. One week it could come in at 30,000, next week could be 60.
Any further questions on this? Being none, I'll accept the motion to transfer from various department salaries in the amount of $782,955 to various department salaries in the amount of $782,955 as displayed in the attachment to item D.
So moved.
On the motion by Counsel McGinn, any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Sasslaw,
Yes.
Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Charist,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 11 to nothing.
We are now on item E in your agenda, and it's the transfer of funds dated June 8th, and it's in an amount of $1,135,868. Mr. Gingrich.
All right, this is an attempt to close out all of our expense accounts for the fiscal year, and I will be coming back with some small tweaks for either the last meeting or the first meeting in July. But the first portion of this transfer deals with the snow and ice removal expense, and that's the $1,135,868. I'm requesting a transfer out of unreserved fund balance for that amount to cover the snow removal costs for this past year. Then below that are transfers within the budget from one line item to another to balance out different expense accounts.
So the transfer that you're seeking is actually
$1,830,000.
$1,832,541, $1,832,541. Just for clarification, and that's on the third page of the attachment, total transfer from to.
Right, and then in addition to that, the skating rink, we're asking to transfer from retained earnings $24,000 to cover some of the repair costs that were unexpected we talked about during the last budget hearing.
Okay, we'll take it in two votes, and we'll take questions right now on any of the information. Council Manning Martin, or do you want Council?
I'll defer to Council Melville, and then after. Thank you.
Council Melville, then Council Manning Martin, and anybody else who'd like to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So the unreserved fund balance versus the budgeted reserve, what are the difference between those two particular items?
Unreserved fund balance is basically retained earnings. That's our reserves at approximately $12 million before we start this amount here. And that's certified by the Department of Revenue. Usually takes us somewhere around October to get that certified. It expires June 30th, and we have to get it recertified. And then we'll do that prior to the tax rate setting so that we'd have that available again for, to reduce the tax rate and then for future transfers.
And you can't use that after that point because it hasn't been certified, correct?
Right.
So that's why we're doing it now.
Right.
So we get it at least allocated prior to that date so that you can then get recertified. And the budgeted reserve is what came from what we budgeted for reserves, or what is in the budgeted reserve account from the previous.
It's within the operating budget, and we've set aside $500,000 for unforeseen events, and we transfer out of that during the course of the year to cover things that we weren't sure about.
All right, through the chair. So what are we going to be at for reserves going into FY19? Just, I know you had brought it up at the last meeting, but I'd just like to be able to get that number just so I have it in the back of my mind.
We should be right around 15 million.
Ideally, you want to be, what is it, 10% of your total budget, or what's the?
Well, we try to be 10.
Okay.
I think by the time we get done with the FY19 tax rate, it'll be more closer to 8.
Okay. And just a comment on that, I know we are moving, and that it makes complete sense why we're making this, we're doing this, how you function as a government, accounting. But with the reserves, I do think it's worthy of a discussion down the line of getting those reserves back up to the point where we come. I think we are a healthy, fiscally healthy city because we could pay for the issues that we saw at the water plant, and we can make these decisions because of the responsibility that was put on before previous councils and whatnot. But I know I just wanted to get those two differences and make sure I get the accounting reason why we're making those transfers. Thank you.
And if I could, Councilor Melville, thank you, good points. And I would like maybe in a meeting, an upcoming meeting, maybe the first meeting after the break, we could schedule a finance committee meeting because we've had some discussions about some ideas to replenish those funds and some maybe a little bit of a game plan going forward that we'd like to discuss and get some input. So if we could maybe schedule that, I think right after the break, maybe in August, the August meeting, we could set that up. Thank you.
Councilman Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Gingrich. I guess I'm just confused about the layout of this memo. It's just not clear to me. Under the top half is, and then when you have this, the line on the bottom, two-thirds down, the line on the bottom, are you saying the left-hand side is from this budget and the right-hand side is to
That's correct.
the other budget?
Yeah.
So, okay, so on the second page, there's from building telephone all the way down to recreation outside services. It's from that to where? Because there's nothing adjacent to it. I don't understand.
So all of the accounts on the left-hand side fund the accounts on the right-hand side, even there's not necessarily a one-to-one.
Okay. All right, so the column on the right is receiving funds from the column on the left.
Correct.
Okay. Because I see a lot of outside services throughout this, but predominantly on the right-hand side. So we're putting overages that we budgeted in 2018 into outside services for streets, water, forestry, parks, garage, council, and GPH. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we underfunded all those outside services for 2019 because they're short. You're telling me they're all short by a considerable amount of money.
Yeah, there's different circumstances that happen, like the water outside services. Those are water breaks. In one year to the next, you're really not sure what they're going to be. This was a heavy year. I think we were up over $1 million in water breaks.
Okay, so for parks, they requested, like last year it was 92,500 in 2018, and in 2019 they're asking for 97,000, but they really are $25,000 short?
Yeah, well, what we do is we try to take some risks to keep the total budget manageable, and in the hopes that we can stay within those budget amounts.
Okay, I understand that, thank you. And then for streets, for outside services, we were short $50,000 too. And last year we budgeted for $145,000, and this year for 2019 we approved $150,000, I believe, and then there was still $50,000 short and went to outside services, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So again, we have a lot of money going to outside services. So thank you very much, and that's clearer, so thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next we had Councilor Turco, then Councilor Rossignol, then Councilor Sasslaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Gingrich. On the line of Council Melville's question regarding reserves, are we all caught up after this is done, this budget is done, with water issues, and as far as the Coolidge water treatment plant, so it's still not open. Let's just say, for argument's sake, July 1st it opens. Will we owe any additional monies for next year, and is that budgeted for, or is there an intention to go back to the reserve for the additional monies, and how much would that be?
The way the MWRA works is we get billed on a calendar basis. So the next bill, with additional charges for the Coolidge water treatment plant being down from January through July, would occur in the next budget year, in FY 2020. So that would have to be addressed at that point.
Thank you. So with that, approximately $1.75 million if we're at $250,000 a month. So we're in the same boat that we were this year with water being an issue.
I think there's going to be a $1 million increase about over what we normally do, but not, like the total budget this year was 4.2 million for MWRA. I would anticipate it'd be under 3.
Thank you. So that accounts for, if we approve the 7.5% rate increase request, would account for $1 million of that, is that what you're saying?
That would just help fund the budget.
And not anything to do with the MWRA water? It does fund the MWRA water, the overage, or it doesn't?
It funds the budget, which eventually would drop to free cash, which would give us funds available to budget the next fiscal year and use some money to put towards it.
And here, my question is, and I know you can't accurately predict this, but are we looking at another 1.75? How much are we looking at to take out of reserves again next year when this comes up again and we have another budget issue next year? I mean, are we raising $1 million now with the 7.5% increase, and then the intention is to go to reserves for another $750,000? Just, break down some numbers for me of what we might be looking at for next year.
See, the intention would be to use as little reserves as possible and to rely on that water rate increase to help do some of the funding. Right now, in this current fiscal year, the water usage is down 9%. So even if you go up 7%, you've got 9% less usage. So you're not really generating a lot more revenue.
Thank you. With that, I was at the water treatment plant this week, and it does look pretty good, but are we still on schedule for July 1st? Does that look...
I can speak to that. The state is testing next week. Testing goes well, we should be online. I don't want to say July 1st, but it's right there. The testing is taking place next week.
Thank you. That's all.
Councilor Rosenau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Turco asked a couple of my questions. The one question I do have is the budgeted reserve. You said that you fund that line for $500,000, and there's an $86,000 request to move out of that line. Is there a remaining balance to that line item after that?
That's the
imbalance.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Sasslaw?
Thank you. So I only question, is the North Shore Essex assessment on the second page, $199,809? So is that the vocational school that we're talking about? Number one, I don't want to assume.
Yeah, so what happened was we got the preliminary assessment last year. We budgeted that money, and they found some additional funding for their capital, so they reduced our assessment. That money was remaining to be used.
Okay, that's great. That's a lot of money, $200,000. And the solid waste rubbish, was that from opening up the landfill? Is that additional money that we got for the landfill, or where'd that come from? The $100,000?
No, but we've been using more recycling and sending less trash to Covanta, so we have some savings there.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Being none, I'll accept the motion to transfer from various line items as displayed in Exhibit E, $1,832,541 to the various line items as displayed in Exhibit E in a similar amount, 1,832,541.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman McGinn. Discussion, seeing none, roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Sasslaw,
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville, Charist, Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
On that same Exhibit E, there is a skating rink transfer that's being requested from retained earnings, $24,000 to CIP skating rink. Mr. Gingrich.
Yes, this is a clean up and make their budget in balance for some equipment work that they had done earlier this year, and to be funded from retained earnings. The current balance is around $265,000.
Questions from the council? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to do a transfer from the skating rink retained earnings account to CIP skating rink in the amount of $24,000.
So moved.
On the motion by Council Rossignol. Discussion, seeing none, roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Sasslaw,
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Charist,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
We are now on F. Councilor, Mr. Gingrich.
So if I could, before Mr. Gingras, Councilor Melville asked about school safety earlier, and I said a future meeting. I was thinking maybe a couple meetings from now. I didn't know it would be a half hour later, but it's actually on for tonight. I got some meetings mixed up, but that issue is on for tonight, and that's what Mr. Healy is here for. $150,000 investment specifically to the high school entrance is going to be redesigned, that we feel will have strong safety benefits. We're investing in cameras at a number of schools, keypad systems at a number of schools, and also some work here at City Hall, doors, locks, a keypad system, as well as some small work at the library. I can't get into many, we talked earlier, can't get into many specifics beyond that, but that work is to commence immediately upon the students exiting the building for the summer. That work is actually, some of the work has been moving forward now, but the real work will take place during the summer, and we should have everything in place, at least this phase of work, by September and the opening of the school. But questions beyond that, certainly Mr. Healy is here to answer.
Just so will that actually change the appearance of the entrance, out of curiosity?
No, it won't change the appearance. I can give some of the details on this. There's the two double doors, you have when you come in the front entrance there, you open it up and then there's another set of doors. So there's a little alcove area. We're actually putting in additional locks, and we're opening up the wall where the person would be let in. They can't get into the second door until they have their ID checked, and they have to get a clearance from a person who will be there full time at the entrance. Because right now, you go in, you get buzzed, there is somebody there, but you can get buzzed and go through the set of doors. So we're gonna tighten that all up, where you can't get through the second set of doors until that person buzzes you in after seeing your license and that additional security.
So is it fair to say, and I might be wrong, that I thought in the past there was somebody there and you could get buzzed. You won't get buzzed from the principal's office. You actually get buzzed by the person who is actually manning that desk. There'll be someone manning there all the time. And usually there always is somebody there, but at times there haven't been,
There should be somebody there at all times, and there will be now. So there'll be somebody sitting in a little, the corner area. Right now, there's a couple of benches kind of right as you lead into the auditorium entrance. That will be a small office space to have somebody there, again, to check IDs and buzz somebody into that next set of doors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you putting that front and center and taking care of that. I appreciate that.
Councilor Turco first, and Charest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor. Mayor, just a quick question. Did we have a professional security company come in and make these recommendations, or were these made by within the city?
There was recommendations that Mr. Healy made. Tim, we could speak. I know he's met with contractors, met with different companies regarding the cameras and the keypad systems and things like that. But we didn't hire an outside security consultant to come in. And we used certainly the police officers, particularly at the high school, who had some wonderful suggestions.
Thank you. You made Tim get up for no reason, then you already answered my question, so thank you.
Tim, you may want to stay there. Maybe somebody will ask you a question. Councilor Charest.
Thank you. Through you to Tim Haley. No, I'm going kidding. No, I'm not. The material that's going to be used for that doorway that the mayor had talked about, is that going to be changed at all? Materials that's there now to, I don't want to get into too much, but is it just the hardware or the
The
glass?
hardware will be modified. The existing hardware is going to be modified. That actually hardware that doesn't exist right now is going to be installed. And then it's going to be a security window, and that window will be it's classified, it's classification of level of security, the type of window it is. It's also going to have a pass-through so they can pass papers or whatever they need through there. So that one thing will solve quite a few problems at the high school, where there's quite a few people that come to the high school that don't need to come into the building. This will prevent them from even entering the building. A lot of people, my kid forgot left their homework at home. They forgot their lunch. Those things happen every single day, dozens of times. Those people don't have to come into the building. We can stop them there, do what we need to do, and they can leave.
So you answered my question. That material is going to be changed without getting into too specific, and I appreciate that. And several years ago, we had two different safety audits, Mr. Mayor, as you could probably remember. And I know they talked about locks, so I'm assuming some of this information that we're utilizing to make the adjustments today came from those professional audits that we had. Am I correct?
Yes, those were helpful. In fact, one other report I wanted to make that Mr. Healy has wrapped up for us. Every school now, there was one remaining school that was done over April vacation, but every school now, every classroom has Columbine locks that you can lock from the inside. The one remaining school was finished, as I said, April vacation, but that was a big investment that we all made in last year's capital. There were 3 schools that needed to be done. So now every school has Columbine locks that can be locked from the inside.
Mr. Healy, thank you.
That was part of the report and everything.
Councilor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I just wanted to ask the mayor or Mr. Healy. I fully support the hardening of the schools while still keeping them, welcoming, but we do have to protect the staff and the students. These are the times we live in. This capital request, is this just the beginning, or is there going to be more projected? I guess you have a rough estimate of what it could be. I know we're dealing with just this item, but just
No,
curious.
good question. We're looking at this as phase 1. This is going to be a continuing topic going forward every year. There's weaknesses we'll be continuing to identify and again try to strengthen and tighten those up, but no, this isn't the end of it by any means.
Thank you.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on this transfer request, there's 2 line items, and I just want to request that we separate them as far as the motions go.
That was the plan.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the unreserved fund balance transfer of $150,000 to capital security equipment construction in the same amount of $150,000? Seeing no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to allow the transfer. On the motion,
So move.
Council Melville. Any discussion? No further discussion. Roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Sasslaw,
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Charist,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Next item on that attachment is a transfer from the unreserved fund balance in the amount of $35,000 for a charter review in the amount of $35,000. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think through the dialogue we've had on this thus far, limited dialogue we've had on it thus far, I'm still struggling to understand the deficiencies with our charter that would justify us, beginning an 8 to 10 month process and a ballot initiative and so forth through any of the kind of two approaches that would require either a home rule amendment or home rule petition alternatives. So, it has come to light through those discussions with input from both our city solicitor and from the representatives from UMass that were here, that we do have the authority as council to make some adjustments to the charter, specifically some of the cleanup that was alluded to at our first discussion on this topic. The example was raised about the objectionable language in the charter with respect to women. We can fix that for free by just taking council action on that, and we can do that without engaging any outside consultant. So I'm not saying that we might not at some point want to engage the UMass people in a more limited capacity to evaluate any of the construction issues and so forth, but I think it's premature to start down that road. I'd really like to see what we could do here first to address the issue, because I've yet to hear anything from any other councilor or any other constituent that articulate to me what the specific deficiencies are in the charter that would require us to go kind of this large scale approach to kind of a charter overhaul. So for those reasons, I do not plan to support this transfer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other councilors? My only opinion is it's okay, go ahead.
I just had a question. If we allocate the 35,000, does that put us in a obligation of going the whole route and spending the 35,000 to the chair, to you?
I think if we authorize the 35,000, we'll enter into a contract with the folks from, I believe it's Boston University, but to do the review with us. It would be handled by outside of us. We wouldn't be involved in the process. We would have final approval of the process, but it would not be something that we would do. But yes, if we engage the contract, we have to execute the contract.
Excuse me, but my question is, if we approve the transfer, is that automatically putting us into a contract with the group?
No. If you approve the transfer, the funds are available. The mayor would have to, enter into a contract, and then that would be.
And to you, when would that discussion of entering the contract start? I know it started. When will there be a vote in a full?
That would be up to him, because it would be his contract. So I'll defer to the mayor.
I'm sorry, Mr. Charis, can you repeat that question?
My question is that if we approve the 35,000 as suggested here, and I'm listening to Councilor McGinn and some of his points that I'm thinking about, and I know that at this point, if we allocate the money, doesn't mean it's already gone into a contract. Will we have another discussion about the need to do the full-blown audit or change, charter review, or will we have time to discuss the possibility of not needing the full description of the charter?
Well, I haven't spoken to Mr. McGoldrick, and I wasn't present at the meetings, but I think it'd be like any contract that it's paid, and then that money is worked off depending on how much work he does. And I'm sure he's being paid on an hourly rate. So if there's work that can be done internal, that's certainly an option to reduce the amount that we would need to pay. That could be something that would be handled through the committee.
Any other questions? Council Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You being the chairperson of the ad hoc committee, are you comfortable in, and I know it's all time commitment, are you ready to make recommendations if we decide not to go forward with the contract? Are you in any position to dig in and start, or your team, and it's made up of yourself, Councilor Manning Martin, Councilor Melville, are there recommendations you think you could make to the rest of the body to do some basic charter change?
You're asking me personally? No. I wouldn't feel qualified to do it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert in charter. I don't agree with Mr. McGinn. I think it's short-sighted, but I don't agree with it. You're talking about 0.00020 of a budget, of a $171 million budget, and a document that is laden with overlay after overlay after overlay of change. Yes, it's all there, but we don't even know which changes are going to occur with which thing, and then it would be an internal document. I like the idea that they presented, but again, I'm only one opinion here. And, just as others are entitled to their opinion, my opinion is it'd be money well spent to get a good document. And to say that nothing comes out of it, there could be substantial savings that comes out of that. For instance, in the preliminary election rules, if there were changes in preliminary election rules that didn't force preliminary elections based on the number of candidates, that could be significantly different for the city. And again, those are all things that are considered by people outside of us. They're only recommendations that people make. But I think, the fact that you've got even, today we got a correspondence from the State House, basically a recommendation from the Ways and Means that an amendment is going to be passed to have our charter published on the internet. And, there's a subsection of that amendment that they're looking to propose that would have us notify on a regular basis by postcard to constituencies, the residents of the city, that the charter is there available for them to review, and hopefully they reject that piece at least. But I just think it was like zoning. Somebody had to do the groundwork first. You can fight about the votes afterwards, but somebody has to do the groundwork. Somebody with some knowledge and skill and dedication of time. Am I ready to do that? I just don't even have the skill set to do it, so that's my opinion.
So, Mr. Chairman, is there an urgency that we have to act on this tonight?
Is there urgency? No? I'd say vote it up and down with your conscience. I'm not...
Okay. I was involved early on with some, just earlier tonight, with some discussion about pros and cons of it, and I really haven't had time to decide whether it's good or bad, but if we vote up or down, so be it. Okay, thank you.
Councilman McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And while I appreciate you did the math on the percentage of the budget, that it's really not about the dollar amount. It's about what we're undertaking here and why we're undertaking it. It's to me, it seems like we've got a solution looking for a problem. Through you to Councilor Gould, in our meetings, we've never talked about any of the deficiencies specifically. We had one item that was identified, and the one item that was specifically identified, we were told, we were given direction that we could fix that by action of the council. We haven't had any meetings where we've talked about other items on a specific basis that we actually find to be problematic. So, I think it's to some extent, it's a bit of an unfair question to the chairman because that hasn't been the subject matter of those meetings. The subject matter of the meetings has really been about the process. What process would we pursue? And so we had some discussion around the process. We brought in this third party. They gave us some additional guidance. But we've never gotten down to the nuts and bolts of what the actual problem is. So I just have a problem personally proceeding on something where when I look at it and I say, well, and it's not that long a document. I mean, it's, 12, 14 pages? I go through it, I can highlight it, I can see some things, and I think we could pretty quickly ask questions back to the city solicitor to say, do we or do we not have the authority to make these changes? We can get answers to those questions. So that's the path that I've been advocating for as I've got more information on this, and that I don't think is really should be categorized as short-sighted. I think it's just a different approach to perhaps the same end. Thank you.
Let's make a correction there. It's not 12, 14 pages. It's the charter document and all the overlays and changes that have been made since 1916 to 2017. So every time we've amended an ordinance, there's an amendment on an amendment on an amendment on an amendment. All of that is included in your charter today. So that's what I'm saying, and that's where I think the problem is. But again, it's my opinion. It's a problem. Councilor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not to sound like a cliche, but both councilors have made good points. I just think that we get, as elected officials, knocked all the time about costs, and I think that this is maybe something we look at in the future. I just think at this point in time, while it's only $35,000, I don't think it's an immediate need, and that's why I won't support it either. Thank you.
Councilor Melville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I mean, my only point on this would be that we'll get another government agency that we can bring in for $35,000. Yes, it is a cost, but think of the legal costs. We're going to be going back and forth with our city solicitor. We have experts who came in here, who spent the time with us. We asked them a lot of very point-blank questions, exactly the way we should be. If they did not give us good answers, we would not retain them. We had the opportunity to speak with them. I thought it was compelling. I thought we got a lot of good information out of it. Not everything is going to be political that comes out of this document. It's going to be streamlined so that the residents of Peabody will understand how their government works in a better fashion. I can tell you, as somebody that was running and has experience in government, it was not the easiest document to navigate. Still isn't the easiest document to navigate it as an elected official. Lastly, with regards to the presentation that those folks gave us from UMass Boston, they have tremendous experience with regards to what other communities have done successfully. I think that's information that's very valuable to us in the city of Peabody. I do respect the cost, and I also respect what Councilor McGinn is saying, that what specifically we're looking at. Well, I think it's a pretty broad document, and we could point at a lot of different things and get lost in it, and I would rather use the money now, put together with regards to the group that came in, discussed and briefed us on it, and I think we can get a lot out of it. So that is my opinion. Thank you.
Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't want to repeat what was well said by Councilor Melville, but being on the council now for, 10 years, it's not an easy document to navigate. You go online, and you click into it, and you have to search for what you're looking for, and then as what you've described, if you click the link, it'll bring you to another link, which will bring you to another link, because it's been updated and changed so many times, but nothing is streamlined, and it's very difficult to follow. And when constituents ask me why we're doing something a certain way, I'll always have to say, well, I have to check the charter. Let me get back to you. And I hate when I have to say, let me check the charter, because I hate checking the charter because I can't follow it. It's very difficult. So I've actually been looking forward, and I was glad that I was named to this committee. I've been looking forward to the work, and that, as Council Melville said, We'll have experts that come in that have a proven track record of streamlining the process, and that woman was quite knowledgeable. She was spitting off things in each community right from the top of her head. So I think it will be expeditious, money well spent, and frankly, I don't want to be on a committee that's kind of feeling our way around on the dock with a document, in the dock with a document like that. So I find this to be a good, beyond an exercise, but I think it will improve our government, and the next time somebody says they want to update our charter, we will all be dead and gone. So we might as well do the work while we're here, clean it up, and leave a good document for those behind us. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to your meeting if this passes. So I wanted to talk to you about that tonight anyway. Thank you.
Councilor Rossignol?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with both Councilor Melville and Councilor Manning Martin, and I don't want to be redundant either. The one thing I do want to just interject is this isn't their first rodeo. They've done it in a number of communities. And the other thing that I just wanted to point out is this is going to be a transparent and open dialogue. There's going to be a subcommittee as well as a vote to the community. So if at any point it's taking us down a path that we as a board or the community doesn't want to go, we can always change course, because it will be a living, breathing document. And I do think the charter right now is just a scattergun of information that is kind of all over the place. So I think this would be welcomed, and I think it would be a good opportunity to really streamline what this city is all about. So thank you.
Councilor Turco?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In all honesty, I thought we were still a meeting away from actually deciding which way, more in line to what Councilor Charest said. Did we vote to go this route? Because I don't quite recall voting to go the full route at the $35,000. I thought there was some discussion of which route we were going to go. And forgive me if I'm wrong. Maybe I forget things. I'm getting old. But I don't remember all deciding that this was the direction we were going to take to go this route rather than the route that Councilor McGinn had mentioned. I thought there was some good discussion. I agree that those experts you can't buy that type of expertise. $35,000 to me is a great price for that type of knowledge, but I don't believe this council voted to do that. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, the vote that we took that evening was to request the mayor authorize the funds to be placed in this year's budget so that we could be able to contract.
And through that vote, we decided that we were going to go the full process and not through home rule petition, because I don't seem to remember that.
No, it was after the presentation by that group. We had a vote that was made because the only one who can request is the mayor. We can't put money in a budget. So if he felt it was important to do, the idea was he would request it and the funds would be put in the budget for us to be able to contract with that group. If he felt it wasn't, then it wouldn't go no further.
Thank you. I appreciate the information. So I guess my point would be that there wasn't much discussion about this. It was one meeting, and this is a major, major undertaking. And I think similar to any contract that's signed and sealed, there's always some reluctance to reopen a contract and I don't need to tell you, Councilor Gravel, I mean, you traditionally as a businessman wouldn't reopen a contract. And I could see the difference between a 100-year-old charter and a contract. I just wonder if there should be maybe just a little bit more discussion about this before we jump into such a large process. I would just hope that we could, as a council, just like we did tonight, throw some back and forth as to the pluses and minuses and the real reason behind it. And I don't want to imply that it hasn't, but much to Councilor McGinn's point, we talked about women's rights issues. Those definitely need to be taken out. We can do that. That was really the only major issue that was brought up tonight. You brought up primaries. That's just a great example because I wouldn't support doing away with the primary. That makes me nervous to do away with the primary. As a guy that won his primary by 11 votes and I needed that primary to get me to a final election, and I'm not saying that in a selfish manner, but it's the electoral process. I know other communities have done it. I just wonder how much control I have as a councilor once I open that. So I would like to have a little bit more discussion on the issue, and you've already stated your case that you'd like it to go to a vote tonight, but I wouldn't support it as of tonight. I may in the future, with maybe one more meeting of your subcommittee. I think that would be great for all of us, but that's all I would ask.
Let's just clear the air on one thing. I used a couple of examples because I can't cite the entire document. What they do with that document would be dependent upon their discussions. It wouldn't involve us, and it wouldn't be a political process. So they might bring up that as a discussion. I'm just using them as examples. The same thing as, Council McGinn fell on the, yes, I realize that we're capable of changing some language that's offensive in there. I find it personally offensive, but I was using that as an example. That's not the only reasons why you would ever do it.
Mr. Chairman, I was well aware you were using it as an example. I was just using your example as to something that I would not like, and how much do I have control over that once it's brought to, the change is brought forth. And that's why I just think maybe, another half hour's worth of discussion with those gentlemen, lady and gentlemen that were before us, or some more back and forth between this council before we venture off into reopening it. We could approve this $35,000 at any time. I don't really see the rush to do it tonight, but it's just my opinion. Thank you.
Move the question.
On the motion to move the question, roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
No.
McGinn,
No.
Gould,
No.
Sasla,
Yes.
Mitsoulas, Manning Martin.
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
No.
Melville,
Yes.
Gravel, Charist, sorry, Ed.
Yes.
Gravel,
Yes.
motion to move the question carries 7-4.
On the question, the motion would be to transfer from the unreserved balance $35,000 to charter review in the amount of $35,000.
So moved.
On the motion by Council Manning, discussion.
Question on the language of the motion? Question on the language of the motion? Can I question? I'm questioning the language is to transfer $35,000 from unreserved fund balance to set aside funds for the charter review. That's all we're voting on tonight. On the language of the motion is to set aside.
When you fund a line item, just for clarification, so you asked for a point of clarification, you're funding a line item. The mayor, at that point in time, is the only contract authority that exists. It would be up to him to execute the contract. If he decided not to execute the contract until he had further discussion, that's totally up to him. But we have no authority to execute a contract. So all you're doing is you're funding a line item which he then has control over.
Understood. Thank you.
Motion, roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
No.
McGinn,
No.
Gould. Sasla.
Yes.
Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Manning Martin.
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
No.
Melville,
Yes.
Charist,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-4.
The last item on the agenda this evening is a proposed ordinance language, schedule of compensation, Director of Public Services, Assistant Director of Public Services. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. This is just some housekeeping. This was a discussion we had and a vote was made. I want to say it was a couple of meetings back regarding increasing the salary for the director. And at that time, I proposed the topic of raising the assistant director's salary as well. And I believe that there was a discussion and approval given, but never in the form of a full vote. I just wanted to bring that forward to have the full vote made to increase the salary for the Director of Public Services to $135, the Assistant Director of Public Services to $95.
Council Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, through you to the mayor, I recall the meeting, it was just a couple months ago, and there was a lot of discussion on it, and I think it was unanimous. But my only concern is that the language in this does not say up to 135,000 or up to 95,000, which was what was agreed upon and discussed. So if we could put that in there, I would advocate for that. And also, how do we, because it's a little confusing with the previous way it was in the charter, or the ordinance, excuse me, was broken down reflective of that ordinance change that you had requested to link non-union employees with union employees, am I correct? And that's why this one was 1.75% increase, 2% increase, and 2% increase beginning 2015, 16, and 17. I think that, am I following that? Is that the recollection? Because that ordinance is up now. So those two things, our discussion was up to 135 and up to 95. And of course, you weren't going to hire them out of the gate at that. It was up to your discretion, was up to. But what do we do about 2019 and 2020, given that you have increments in the old language of percentage increase, which I believe was reflective of the changes that you made, you requested to link it to the non-union, to the union raises?
You're right on both counts. It would be, on the first issue, it would be up to that number. That would be the max. I can tell you right now that I'm getting ready to announce the hiring of the Director of Public Services, and they are not at the max, that individual. I would be moving up to the max Kevin Kelly as the assistant. I felt that that was warranted, his number of years of service and the work he's done. And if I did propose to increase that salary in the past, once I get a large number of the union contracts completed and signed, then I have come to ask for the non-union or the ordinance employees to do that. I haven't got to that point yet, but to increase that over the 135, I'd have to come back to you for a full vote.
Okay, so then we could, I think it would suffice if we said to both of them up to, because we did discuss that individual, the assistant was going to get 95 because he was owed that at that time, and then up to 135 for the language, and then on that other, that would be fine. And then on that other note, I know when you proposed that ordinance change, I did not support it, and at the time, I know there was a lot of discussion that we could reconsider it to do it on an annual basis in the future, as opposed to linking, you know, like linking all those
I'm comfortable with that.
With the union. So if we could do that annually and not, because I wouldn't support doing that again for the next 3 years to link it that way with non.
I'm comfortable with that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, papers flying everywhere here. So what are we comfortable with? What's the motion?
I think the motion would be to,
Advertise?
yeah, to, as it's written, to change the language, but indicating up to 135 and up to 95. With the on the motion, yes, and then with the understanding, the mayor agrees to come to us annually to discuss raises outside of linking it to the union raises that he's negotiating.
Okay, the motion is to amend the ordinance for the Director of Public Services and the Assistant Director of Public Services, for the Director of Public Services up to $135,000, and for the Assistant Director of Public Services up to $95,000.
So moved.
Motion by Council Manning, discussion.
And to have that advertised as advertised.
And thank you, Mayor.
On the motion by Council Manning, discussion. Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors O'Neill,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Gould,
Yes.
Yes.
Mitsoulas,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Melville,
Yes.
Charist,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 11 to nothing.
I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting of the whole of the Finance Committee to go to a special meeting under President's arrest. Favor, any opposed vote?